Thank you, Chris. So, by all means, here's start your story.
Thank you very much. I am telling a rare, because I'm not big on personal stories, but I had an experience that was life-changing for me several years ago. And it's taken me a while to figure out how to express it. And I will tell you the name of the story at the end of the story. Well, when I was significantly younger than I am right at the moment, I met a woman through our spiritual connection. She belonged to a group up here. I belonged to a group down there. And we met at a women's circle. And she was very attractive, very slender, almost waif-like, long chestnut hair down her back. And she was adored by her students. It was interesting because I didn't quite see what they saw, but I figured it had to be there. So I watched and I listened. At one point, during this talking circle, she announced a tradition of her people, and I was familiar, I thought, with many of them, but it was a tradition I had never heard of. And so I did what my elders had taught me. I crossed my hands in front of myself, and I said to everyone, "Excuse me, but as I'm not familiar with this ceremony, I don't feel it's right for me to participate. I don't want to dishonor her sacred objects or my tradition. So please feel free to pass it over the top of me." And I sat back and I waited. And it all went fine. Nobody said a word. And sometime later, we were invited to go to church at their house, if you will. And so I went, and I met a lot of other women that she had worked with. And most of them were very open about how compassionate she was, and many other adjectives that I'm just going to glide over the top of for right now, but you're getting the drift. I didn't dislike the woman, didn't trust her, but I didn't dislike her particularly, except on occasions when she'd do what my grandma would call misbehaving. So we were civil to one another, but never really familial, as most Native people are when they come together. We were always civil. And after a few years, I'm sorry to say that her dear husband passed away horribly. And it was as if she was beginning to wake up, because she saw the illusion of control beginning to slide away, for she was very controlling. We supported as best we could what she was going through, but she was inconsolable. There really was nothing much we could do. I was the one that her students called when she got out of control, when her emotions, when her spirit faded, turning entirely inside out, as if she were the only tree in the forest. And I truly felt for her. Now, there was a point at which she had adopted a daughter, which is, again, not unusual in our customs, that an adult person might be attached to another family. But it was hard. It was a very hard relationship. She was her apprentice and her chosen daughter. And they had some dreadful falling out. It was at one of the ceremonies at my house that she sat outside the church and listened to this woman sing in a lovely, plaintive voice, a song that she had been taught. Outside the church, the wailing commenced. You could hear her throwing her arms up and slapping the side, going, no, 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 no. And we're all sitting around looking at each other. We keep on praying. We keep on singing. And fortunately, my husband was keeping fire. And everything shortly began to calm down. Once we came out of the lodge, though, it picked up with gale force. As the young woman, her chosen daughter, came out from the lodge, she looked up at him and he took her hand to help her up and said, "We got a little drama out here." He has always been a man of minimal words, but boy, did he cover it. So we go into the house, everything seems calmed down, and she starts in again. And she tears this woman in front of everybody who had attended, just with words, just with pain-shredding, heart-beating words. And because she was a chosen daughter, and because she was an apprentice, I held my silence. This will come up again later. Well, unfortunately, very soon after, she was diagnosed with a terminal illness and had very little time left. I went every couple of weeks while she had chemo, and I sat with her and we would laugh. And I'd tell her the news that was going on in the clan. One day, I made a date with her. I was bringing over a week's worth of frozen foods, all in individual dishes, for the freezer, the kind of stuff you're supposed to do. And I said, let's sit down and have a cup of tea. And I asked her if we might have and I say this with no disrespect, I use this with a great deal of respect. We had a come to Jesus meeting, which means only the truth will be told here. And I told her how I felt I'd been treated, I said nothing about what I had done wrong or what she had done wrong, so much as how it made me feel. Well, that was the beginning. And she very, very quietly listened to everything I had to say as I requested. And then I said, now I ask you, please speak to me and tell me what's in your heart. And she did that for some time. And I won't go into the length and breadth and depth of the conversation, but it was deep and it was true. She talked and said, you don't act like a friend. And I looked at her and I broke out laughing. I said, whatever made you think we were friends? I said, friends like each other. They trust each other. I don't know about you, but I can't vote for either one of those. And she nodded her head. I said, we are sisters. I held you in my arms while your husband's head rested on your chest so that your heartbeat was the last thing he ever heard. And you were with my late husband the day that his heart finally stopped for the last time. We're not friends. Through some wonderful sense of humor, Creator has made us sisters. And there we are. We are stuck. So let's work it out. And we did. It was very difficult in the beginning because she was coming to grips with her own mortality. And again, more and more control slipped away from bodily things to mental, to the pains in her heart and her fear of leaving, all of which were truly real. And I knew that. I offered one day, I said, you know what? Why don't we take a look at all of your sacred things, all the things that you hold dear, and let's make a list of them. And that way you can be in charge of where these sacred things will live, who they will go to. And that's exactly what we did. I met every week. We made lists, we named people, we switched things around, and we worked together. I was there an hour after she crossed because I was to prepare her body in the traditional way. And she threw a lavish celebration of life department. Celebration of life in this gorgeous place. She had saved money so she could do this. People showed up from Ireland, from the Netherlands, from France, many places that she had gone and taken native teachings to non-native people. And they all have, of course, it's a memorial, so everybody had wonderful things about her. And I got so many people that said, oh, you were such a good friend to her. You were such good friends. And I corrected every one of them. And I said, we were never friends. She was my sister and I am hers. And they looked at me and I said, I was never her student, but I learned a lot from her over the years. And they nodded their heads and hugged me. And I thought to myself, I learned how important it is to be compassionate to the young as you age. I learned not to raise my voice, nor address anyone in public who had made an error. I learned to lower my voice when I wanted to scream. And so I could truly say, I was never her student, but I learned a lot. And that's how she became the unintentional teacher. Oh.
Whoa.
Very nice. Here's Crow.
Thank you.
Very nice. Okay. Would you like some feedback?
Always.
Okay. Does anybody have a comment for our friend on her story? Yes, Patricia.
I love to be included with storytellers who do or do not appreciate personal stories. And that's one that tells us all why.
Thank you, Patricia. Someone else? Thoughts?
I thought it was an absolutely marvelous story, heartwarming, personal story, and only can hope and pray that in the similar situation, I have somebody that good in my life.
Thank you.
And that honest.
Kiran.
I love the sincerity that poured out of you. And I especially could resonate with bits of it, especially the end, the unintentional teacher. That's a fabulous ending to that. It did make me think of someone else in my life who's also no more. Thank you.
Thank
The
you.
intentional daughter and then the unintentional teacher. The contrast was really interesting. Barbara.
Well, it really touched my heart more than I can say, because at the moment, my one and only remaining sibling, my older sister, is in home hospice. And I've been spending a lot of time with her. sharing family stories. She was always my best audience. I'm younger than her, but she loved my stories, and I've been telling her stories. And when Here's Crow began her story, she was talking to me. And the phrases that she was using, I wanted to write everything down that she said. The most beautiful phrasing, that your choice of words was just beautiful. Illusion of control. And then, and it also reminded me a little bit of, I just thought of it now as I'm talking, of my favorite quote from Socrates, who said, and I'm translating it from Greek, every obstacle for a reason. And oftentimes we take some time before we find out what the reason was. In due time, we hear the reason. And of course, my late husband and I would argue a little bit about how to translate the word embodio. I'll say it in Greek. Κάθε, every, embodio, yakalo, embodio, obstacle, detour. In Greek, so whatever, the idea is there. And once again, unintentional teachers are everywhere. Thank you so much. I really, mwah, mwah, mwah. Beautiful story.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I would like to throw out, is there anyone who has a comment about the pacing of the story? Because this is a work in progress. I think this is my final edit, but that doesn't mean I can't tweak here and there if it's going to make it better.
I think the pacing was fine. You know, especially, quite honestly, especially since you are of a native tribe, that it's a personal tale of someone in a native tribe. So it's more of a, I feel like those are more of a sit down conversation. Let me give you what I know. That's my thought. So I thought it was perfectly fine because, yeah, Chris, go ahead.
The time pacing was marvelous. I would only say in terms of vocal intensity, you might want to be somewhat more relaxed at the beginning of the story to give it a rise.
Nice.
In emotional intensity toward the end of the story. Does that make any sense?
Absolutely. And I can see exactly where I can begin to raise it and then let it lower and devil out a bit before I hit a high. Yep. Very good. Thank you.
So there's like a crescendo, you're kind of saying. Okay.
Just an appreciation for Chris Rydell. She has the most exquisite way of offering appreciations and comments. Her language, it just, thank you, Chris. I had to say that every time. Spot on.
I am so affected by that. That's just what a remarkable thing to hear. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful comment. Thank you.
I meant it from my heart. I'm getting verklempt. I'm from Brooklyn and a Jewish background. I'm Greek, but I'm verklempt. I get emotional.
One last comment for Kiran, and then we're going to move on to the next teller. Go ahead, Kiran.
Just very quickly, because I am unfamiliar with your customs and tradition, that would be something that I would be more interested in hearing a little bit more of when you were talking about the lodge and things. So it's just a personal thing for me.
And I thank you very much. I avoided it just because it's new information that could derail the direction of the personal relationship. But it could go either way, I suppose. That's the way That was my reason for choosing that, but I'll look at it again. I always look at what people tell me and say, what if? So that I know I've looked at it from every angle. That's why I come to the guilds.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Here's Crow. Thank you so much for that. Great story. Very heartfelt. You're appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, Quinn, from what I understand, you have a story now as well, and we're looking forward to it coming from Quinn's RV and in an unknown location.
Yes, from an RV in the middle of the desert in Arizona. we were planning on spending out the rest of the winter. Just one moment. I'm going to go back into gallery mode, if you don't mind. I really like to see the faces of the people that I'm telling to, and when I'm in the spotlight, I lose that privilege. So I always ask folks to bear with me and go back into gallery mode so I can see all your expressions. That's how I get energy. So this tale is called The Curious Tale of the Fairy Cobbler. Now, I picked this up from a writer named Athie Thompson, and I follow her on Facebook. I don't know if any of you do as well. She writes mostly poetry, but she's published a book, and the book is called A Book of Little Folk Tales by Athie Thompson. And it's mostly poetry, but within it are some tales, and this is one of them. And this is, I've recrafted it just a whisk a bit, because it was a reading tale, and I had to change it just a wee bit so it'd be a good telling tale. So here we are, and I'm going to send her a link to this as well and ask her to review it and tell me what she thinks. Now, a very long time ago, there was a small inn right in the village on the Emerald Isle. It was a very busy and oddly prosperous little inn. It was much busier than any of the other inns in town, and even though it wasn't on a main road. And all of this was despite the best efforts of the innkeeper, who was kind of well known for being an ill-tempered sort and not very well liked. Yet wealthy travelers would often stay the night whilst they was traveling through this particular village. Now, there was also within this inn a little tavern, and the tavern was always full of laughter and drinking, and great bowls of Irish stew and Kilcannon was passed around. And well, Kilcannon is an Irish dish made of cabbage and potatoes, particularly good. And it filled the revelers, and it was always finished off with tankards of mead and ale. And all was fine, except for one curious thing. Every now and again, a customer would complain about missing shoes. Missing shoes? How preposterous is that? I mean, who could possibly misplace their shoes? Those shoes, what being an expensive luxury as they was in those days. And then to make it even stranger, it was often reported that only one shoe was actually missing. How could anyone misplace just one shoe? Well, this business was so good, the innkeeper would just take their customer and send them off across town and to the local cobbler. And the cobbler would make a new pair of shoes, and the innkeeper would pay for it. And well, the cobbler got work, and the customer got new shoes, them being a luxury and all, and the inn stayed prosperous. So, everybody should have been happy in all of this. I mean, everybody got what they wanted in the end. Business continued to be good, and the inn and the innkeeper continued to prosper. In time, though, despite it all, his good fortune, the innkeeper became more and more irritated at this occasional missing shoe kind of thing. So he set about that he was going to get to the bottom of this conundrum. And that very night, he set himself up in one of the rooms where the shoes were reported to have vanished from. He lay in the cot, and all night in the darkness, and he never heard a sound. Until midnight, he heard the tavern clock strike 12. And with the striking of the very last bell, he heard a little noise within the room. It was a little scratching kind of a sound, and it was from within the wardrobe. Well, he sat up on the edge of the bed all ears and listened hard, stared into the darkness. And then he heard the latch pop open on the wardrobe, and he heard the wardrobe door start to swing open. The innkeeper, he struck a match, and just as he put the match to the lamp, he looked, And there, stepping out of the wardrobe, was this wee little man. He was less than a foot tall. And he looking around, his eyes looking around all the room as he crept out of the wardrobe and stepped down onto the floor, right into the glare of the landlord. The innkeeper, he stood up and he looked down upon this little man. Well, now, what would you be and what you be doing in my wardrobe? The little man, he didn't flinch an inch. He said, well, I be the local fairy cobbler. And it is my job is to fix the fairy shoes. And it's a very, very important job. And he said all that in a very mild-mannered way. He said, don't forget, he said, it's the fairies that bring us all the luck. And you know, he said, we often don't have the materials that I need in order to fix the fairy shoes. Ah, the landlord, the innkeeper said, so you'd be the one that's stealing the shoes. Well, that might be me, he said. After all, with the shortage of materials, sometimes I got to borrow a piece every once in a while. I need a tack or I need a little bit of leather with which to do my work. Well, I'll be damned if you are, said the innkeeper. He said, I want you out of here right now, and you're never to come back into my inn again. Well, the little man stopped and paused for half a moment, and he opened up the door to the wardrobe and he started to climb back in. And he turned to the innkeeper and he said, are you sure that's what you want? And the landlord, he said, be gone with you. Get out of here. I don't want to ever see your face in any of my property. Well, with that, the little fairy cobbler, he turned back into the wardrobe, closed the door behind him. And don't you know, from that day forward, that inn had nothing but bad luck. Mold grew on the potatoes. Mice spoiled the food in the pantry. The ale went flat. And a sudden storm ruined the roads on that side of town, and there was no more customers to come into that inn. Well, the fairy cobbler, he never did return again. Although there were rumors of a suddenly very busy inn that popped up on the other side of town, well, it seemed occasionally customers would complain about missing shoes. Go figure. Thank you.
Very nicely done. That is a great story. That's really cute.
What fun.
I want to let you know real quick though. I know you said it was like a 3-minute story.
Yeah.
It is actually 7 minutes.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
actually haven't timed it yet.
Yeah, it was actually 7 minutes.
And I think
so-
I might have been a little fast in places, so it probably should be 8 or 9.
yeah, you probably want to plan a little bit more. So yeah,
Yep.
and actually here's Crow, your story was about 13 minutes. Okay.
Great. Thank you for pointing that out.
Oh,
Yeah,
sure,
I was
sure, sure.
mentally in my head thinking 3 or 4 minutes.
Would you like feedback?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's look here. I'm going to gallery mode so I can see everybody. Anybody have a comment for our friend? Phyllis is here. Hey, Phyllis.
Hey,
Hi, Phyllis.
Okay, who's got a comment? Okay, Jim, please go ahead.
So, Quinn, yeah, great story, told smoothly. You know, you didn't get lost in the story. I wondered if this was going to be a story in verse, and because you do so often tell them that way, and there were times where your telling had the rhythm of a verse being told, and then others when it didn't. Sometimes where you had a little bit of a brogue or an accent, and others where you didn't. So I think those would be things I would settle on as I was telling the story, because those are just enough of a distraction that it took me a little bit out of the story. I didn't lose my track. It wasn't major, wasn't a problem, but I would settle on something in terms of those issues as you're telling it.
Yeah, it's not a story in rhyme. I do tend to launch into rhythms. I do kind of do that subconsciously sometimes. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure why I do, but I do. And so yeah, those are excellent points. But yeah, it's not intended to be in rhythm. So
Yeah.
and I probably, if I break it up a bit and understand the timing better, that can probably come out of it as well. So thank you for that.
Well, it could be done in rhythm if you chose. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
that a story wouldn't benefit from that. I'm just saying you kind
Right.
of moved in and out of that mode.
Okay.
Yeah. Great.
Hmm.
Gwen, we have been asked for the source as well. So when you're all done, if you'll put the source in the
Yeah,
chat, that would be
I'll put
absolutely
Athie's
perfect.
book in, the name of her book. She also, if you, on Facebook, if you look for Athie Thompson, I'll put her name in on it. You can find her in there, and she's an absolutely marvelous person. She answers every single person that writes to her.
Wow.
Oh,
that's
perfect. The one thing that I'm going to say is I wish you'd had your computer up so that you're looking more,
Yeah.
Straight on, because
I'm
when
in a
you,
camper.
yeah, I understand. But I was thinking when the little man comes,
Yeah.
that way you can actually then look down, and give the illusion that, he's come into the room or,
Yeah.
or is walking about on the
great.
table.
Good point.
Sure.
So,
My entire living quarters right now is the size of the studio I had in the last house, so it's a little cramped.
I can only imagine. Okay. Chris, yes.
I did want to say one thing. I really enjoyed the story. Thank you, Quinn. That was really fun. You mentioned that you wanted to send her the link to your telling.
Well, yeah, the name.
We don't share the recording out, but Jim, you can cut just that little piece.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah,
could do
and-
it that way. He can
Yeah,
send you
on my
just
list
that
of
story.
things to do at the end was going to be send a note to Jim and ask him to please extrapolate
Got it.
my piece.
Okay,
So
thank
I
you.
can share it
Absolutely.
with her. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
And you can leave it on Facebook or I'm not Facebook, on YouTube or wherever. I don't care.
Yeah. We'll take care of it. It's easy.
Yep. Awesome.
Here's
Good.
Crow. You're muted, love.
You mute.
Here's your muted Crow.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's your fault. This never happened before you. I have very little to contribute to the story per se. Thoroughly enjoyable, for some familiar ground. And because of that, I kept thinking, okay, where is he going to turn us? And you pulled it right out to the very end. And that was lovely. I also fully expected a fairy tale from the twinkle in your eye and the look on your face. Where you saw how my face started at this story, because it was indicative of the story. And I looked at you and I went, oh, I bet this is going to be a fairy tale. So I just want to tell you, if you have control over that, keep it, because it's really good.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
I'm going to say this as a pun, but I do mean it in sincerity. I actually think that this story fits you like a shoe.
Oh, you had to go there. You had to. That was great.
Of course.
Pun
And
no,
fully intended.
To be honest,
will
I
continue
really
to
do
follow.
think that it really does fit you. You're telling the way that you tell who you are, I really do think the story fits you.
Oh, thank you. I would consider that to be quite a compliment.
Anybody else?
Excellent.
One more.
One more.
Quinn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Quinn. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next teller on the roster for this evening is Patricia. Patricia Coffie, you have a story and we're here to listen. Go ahead. Everybody
Thank
mute,
you.
by the way.
Thank you. This is a work in progress. Things just kept happening and connecting and happening and connecting until I thought, I believe that's a story. My question is whether it's a story to be shared as oral narrative or as written word. Vaxxed, OBC, CODEOM. I think I'm doing social media speak. Facts needs no explanation. At least that's my opinion. OBC, or for those of us in the before times, oh, be careful. Because whatever your holiday season or whatever year you think you're in, these are the COVID times, and we are the people who will tell those stories. CODEOM. That might have to just become CDO if these variations keep piling on. Shorter may be necessary. Social media speak. I'm thinking that would be uppercase SMP, lowercase p, because SMS is another form of communication. We don't want to confuse the two. This foray into social media speak for me was driven by experiences at this holiday season. In one home of loved people, one had been vaccinated, but hadn't taken time to be boosted and had found time to go to those holiday parties. Pretty soon his temperature was 103 and he couldn't breathe without coughing. Well, after a few days of that, he had what they call COVID pneumonia, and they told him there was a way to take care of that and treat that. And so he set out. Now, this is in a major city with major medical care. And his doctor recommended the Regeneron shot, but couldn't provide one because supply was short and everything was already promised. He was told he could go to the emergency room, and they tried that because his family could be with him, but it would be an 8-hour wait at least with people all around wailing, and they couldn't take it. They left. Now he was told he could go to urgent care and take his chances. It had been 10 days of that coughing, choking now. He went to urgent care. They would not let anyone else go in with him. So he sat there alone with a temperature of 103 and COVID pneumonia, waiting for 4 hours. He did receive the Regeneron shot, and it was an amazing thing for him. He felt the improvement almost instantly. But he said to those of us who love him, navigating our overwhelmed medical system was really rough. So I go back to what I kept thinking. Oh, be careful. OBC, oh, be careful. Now, on Christmas Eve day, in another huge city with marvelous medical facilities, 5 people are in one household. One has been vaccinated but not boosted. Christmas Eve, he tests positive. He's been in this huge old house with the others for a week. Christmas Day, folks are coming to their place for Christmas celebration. They set up an 8-foot table in the middle of the driveway, because this is down south. And they decorate it with Christmas things, and they put all the gifts there. And the 5, that's the 1 testing positive and the 4 who've been exposed, are in chairs in the grass on one side of that table. And the 5 not testing positive, not exposed at all, are in chairs in the grass on the other side. And one by one, the 10 come to the table to pick up their Christmas gift, go back to their seat, open it, and be thankful. By Christmas Day night, those 5 test positive. And now we have again a household full of the coughing, choking, fever, vomiting, misery of testing positive for another variation. And again, I think, oh, be careful, even of your loved ones, even for your loved ones. And now it's New Year's. And I hear from another household of greatly loved ones, and the grandmother, she's 90. She fell and broke 6 ribs and had to go to the hospital and then into skilled care for 2.5 weeks. She's allowed to come home for New Year's, but not to go into her own attached 2-bedroom house. Instead, she must stay with the family in their part of the house. She tests positive for COVID. She's back in the hospital for another 3 days. And then she's allowed to come back into the family. They're all testing positive by now. I think, again, OBC. I think it so often, I think it probably needs to be just OBC. That signal, that special social media thing that reminds you that even loved ones can share. It reminds you that you should take care of yourself as well as those around you. And it reminds me how very fortunate we have been that all 11 are now doing well. They are all vaccinated, boosted. They practice isolation and masking, and I hope you do that too. I thought of one more part of possible social media speaking for me. That would be DBS. Don't be stupid. But I thought don't BS was a slightly different take on that message. And maybe I should just stay with OBC. Oh, be careful. Thank you.
Your time was about 8 minutes, just to let you know.
Thank you.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, we are going to be telling those stories. I didn't even think of that. We are the ones who are going to be telling those stories, the COVID stories, aren't we?
Yes.
We will be writing that and telling about our experience. So true. Would you like feedback?
Of course.
You asked for some, so yes. Okay. Who's got a thought for Patricia? Yes, here's Crow.
First of all, let me simply say that your enunciation and where you elected to add an inflection versus the calm you were telling with the story was intriguing and absolutely held my attention. And you said one comment about, or earlier on about the story I told being the reason that we should tell personal stories. Well, so is yours. And those are the stories that I love from personal stories, is something we all need to hear, no matter who it happened to. And thank you very much for that message. I will remember it. And if I don't remember anything else, I'll remember to be careful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Chris.
You wanted to know if it should be a told story or a written story. I
Yeah.
understand what you mean by a written story because of the initials.
Yes.
But it gave it such a nice framework that it wasn't just a series of events that you that the initials give it a structure to the
Okay.
story.
Okay.
And I think at this point in time, we are so familiar with social media speak that I
Yeah.
think you don't lose people by using it.
Okay.
So I think it works as a told piece.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. It was lovely.
I think it also put it in a time period, so um, when it all happened. You know what I mean? Because like in my initial generation, we didn't have all that. And now, everybody speaks in those initials. And so, and I especially like the DBS. That is my,
Don't be stupid.
yeah,
As in,
Yeah, that
and
too.
yeah,
Don't-
that
don't
was
keep
really
doing
good.
that BS.
Yeah, right. Yes. Quinn?
I'll admit, I was a little lost in the beginning of where you were going with the three-letter acronyms. But once you get into it, and certainly towards the end, they tied in very nicely. So I don't know if it was just me or if maybe a few less three-letter acronyms at the beginning to get into the story. But the other piece, I spent some time thinking, like Jim had said to me, you kind of drift off a little bit because of cadence or rhyming and not rhyming. I was trying to figure out if this was a personal story or not. I couldn't tell if these were people who were in your life intimately, associates of yours, or simply a piece of, hey, here is what's happening in America today. So I spent a little bit of time, and now at the end of the story, I'm still not exactly sure.
One of my concerns was how to depersonalize it, because these are my sons and their households, my grandsons, my grandchildren, and my nephew. These are people very dear to me, but I didn't want to make it so much. I wanted it to be a broader audience than that. And I didn't want to say Atlanta, Chicago, and Columbia, because
Sure.
these are the COVID times, and it's greater than that. So I have
So
to practice that.
you might want to begin somewhere early on the story with a classic story opener, like in a town somewhere in America, or in a city not very far away. So you get to tell
Oh, I
all of
like
those
that.
details, but you put the listener into a place. You see, I spent your whole story trying to figure out what place this was occurring. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful suggestion. Wow. Great.
One more thought for Patricia.
Just tell it.
Okay, Kiran. Yeah, Barbara says keep telling the story. And Kiran?
I'm a bit intrigued now that I know it is a personal story, and whether that would have more impact. At the same time, I realize you'd probably have to get everybody's permission to tell the story because it is personal to them. I'm just trying to weigh the impact on the audience if it came across as a personal story. It's just a question, yeah?
For what it's worth, I assumed it was. So, yeah.
Is it, and I'm just throwing out just a thought because I know we've got to get on to the next teller so we have enough time, but I was just pondering the idea of, don't we all have a personal story to tell that's come from this time of COVID? And just, this may be your story, or I don't know, something that, Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I was thinking this is one of the things that is in fact worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter whether your holidays are Jewish holidays or Christian holidays or what year it is for you. These are the COVID times.
Mm-hmm. And we've all got the family members. But I think it's a story that you definitely need to tell. And I think it's a good one. I really
Okay.
do.
Very important.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback so much.
Sure enough. Thank you for the story, Patricia. Okay. We have another teller up, and our next teller on the docket is none other than our wonderful Jim. Don't we want to hear from him and listen to his story this evening? I have a
Thank you.
radio voice.
Yeah. I do have a question. So this is a story that I will be telling in February in Chennai, or to a Chennai event. And it will be the first time that I'm telling it to a group who I assume knows nothing about the traditions I'm speaking of. So I'm that's, you know, how does it, and I know that's true for you all too. So I want to work on that. So that's my interest today. And this is I would call it a modern folktale. This is a crafted story by a wonderful storyteller named Jill Hammer. And I'll give you the reference later. But so this is a story very much in a traditional setting, but a modern take on an old setting. It helps to imagine the scene. It helps to imagine that this is the day that Moses has been called to the mountaintop. This is the day when everyone has gathered around the base of the mountain and been told only Moses may ascend. Wait here. This is the day. And as Moses begins to ascend, his sister, Miriam, is dutifully waiting at the base of the mountain. And as she looks to that great mountain where the thunderclouds are already forming, she sees that there's a large stream leaving from the base of the mountain. And as she looks more closely at the source of that stream, she sees that there's a cave from which it's emanating. And as her attention is drawn more and more to that cave, it's as if time stops. There is no movement, just the flow of the water. And the cave itself calls to her. It almost pulses with invitation. And so she heads to the cave, crossing that invisible boundary that no one was supposed to cross, as everyone else seems frozen. And as she enters the cave, it's not dark the way she would have expected, but it glows. It glows with a beautiful, enticing light. And so she travels further up into the cave, further up that stream. In her chest is beating this combination of fear and excitement. To what is she being called? And as she rounds one turn in that river, one turn in that cave, it opens up into a huge rotunda. And there in the center of that wide open space stands a woman, clothed in white, long hair, wrapped in garlands of leaves. And she calls her over. Of course, Miriam would go. And the woman speaks to her and says, Miriam, your brother is up on the mountain receiving his gift, but I have a gift for you. And Miriam looks around, and there, scattered on the floor of this great cavern, are 60 boxes, 60 ornamented boxes, 60 chests that look like they were each handmade. And the woman says to Miriam, pick whichever box you want. It's your gift. So she walks up to the box that's closest to her and she opens the lid and it's empty. There's nothing there. And Miriam turns to the old woman and says, nothing? Would you prefer a different box? Yes, please. She goes to the next box. And she opens the box. Empty. Nothing. May I try again? You may. And every box she goes to is empty. Every one of those 60 boxes, for she tries them all, is empty. And when she's opened the last box and in her despair realizes that she has nothing but emptiness as her gift, she turns to the old woman and said, what kind of cruel joke is this? My gift, it's nothing? My brother is getting some gift from God and I get nothing? The old woman says, tell me, Miriam, what is a river? A river? A river is water flowing down across great distances. No. It's not the water. It's the channel through which it flows. Miriam, I am giving you the gift of empty space. I'm giving you the container in which all goodness comes. I'm giving you the womb in which all this can be born. Miriam made her way back out of the cave, past the people, and looked up to the mountain, heard the thunder and saw the lightning, and knew that she and her brother had both been given gifts that each required the other.
Excellent.
Well,
Excellent.
isn't that significant?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Jim, would you like feedback?
Please.
Okay, by the way, 8 minutes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Who's got a thought for Jim? Okay, Kiran, yes, please.
Very profound story. And I loved your pacing. I love the hand gestures that you used very effectively. I loved your, your side to side movement. So we knew the woman, we knew Miriam. The opening of the box, the first time it was empty. The second time that you didn't look down, but it didn't matter. We kind of knew, it was going to be empty. That's fine. My only comment would be, and it's a niggling one because it's going to be likely to be an Indian audience.
Mhm.
I think the word rotunda is something that your Indian
Okay.
audience may not understand. That
Okay.
that was it.
Thank
Brilliant
you.
story.
Thank you.
Loved it. Fabulous ending too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris,
I was rooted in it. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Absolutely. Your voice was low and measured, and I was completely drawn in. Now, I know what Moses was doing up there. Now,
So you think, yes.
but if there was anything at the very beginning that you could include,
Hmm.
that would let that audience know, because the people at the foot of the mountain, they know what Moses is doing up there, right?
Well,
Or do they not know what he's going to come down with?
no, and they don't actually.
Okay.
They know he's going up for a meeting, but that's all they know. So it's a
Okay.
mystery to them. Yeah. But everybody in the audience would know, not necessarily the people down below, but the listening audience.
Right. So
That should be something they understand.
So just to
yes.
give
Yeah.
some kind of basis for,
Sure.
how did he know to go up there?
Sure.
What does Moses? I can't remember if Moses expects, as if Moses has any idea what he's going to get when he goes up there. But just to give it some kind of root in.
Sure. Great. Thank you.
I'm wondering and forgive me if I've forgotten, what is the significance of 60?
It's one of those magic numbers. It's there's 40, there's 100, it's a magic number.
Okay. So
Yeah.
that answers that. Okay. Okay, Quinn, go ahead.
A few things. I think your intonation and your timing was absolutely riveting. You drew me in right from the beginning. I know the story of Moses and the mountain and why Moses went up the mountain. So those questions didn't occur to me, although I think it was astute that Chris
Mhm.
brought them up. I think your eyes for telling to a video were marvelous. You zoned in on the camera at the right times. Your eyes wandered at the right times. I think you did that absolutely perfect. You had a phrase in that was so good. I had to write it down, and someday I'm going to use it. It pulses with invitation.
Mm.
What a great piece of words that is. My question is the story of Miriam and the angel, or Miriam in the cave, or whatever that the basis is that an existing story based in faith, or is that a companion story to have something to do while Moses is on the mountain?
There's one word in the scripture that says that Miriam is in the mountain.
In the mountain.
That's
Okay.
it. That's it.
And
So
you built
everything
that
else
story around
everything
that.
else is crafted from that one word.
Anybody who would pick up on that, marvelous. That's gonna draw them right in. And I love the end of it, because in these days, who wouldn't love such a box? Just one would be perfectly good with me. Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Kiran just said, I don't
Yeah.
know why Moses went to the mountain.
So
and
yes. Thank you. And
your
he went
audience-
to get the 10 Commandments, although he didn't know he was getting them when he went up. So but all he knew was he was called up the mountain to meet with God. That's all he knew when he went up. But
Okay.
that's an excellent point.
Great. Okay, Barbara, real quick.
Just one little thing, because most of you, if you don't know me, those of you who know me know I have a very quirky sense of humor, and word associations just pop in, and I'm a wordsmith. But as soon as you started on what I know about the Moses is, I couldn't stop for a minute. I thought of Mel Brooks as and then he's coming down the mountain and he says 13, whoops, 12. I'm sorry. I'm just quirky, but it was wonderful. Your pacing, everything about it was just wonderful. It spoke to me.
Thank you.
Because I don't know too much about the Bible stories, but that one I'm familiar, loved it. Thank you so much. But it's me, forgive my quirkiness.
I wanted to congratulate you, Jim, because during the story, you very frequently play with your beard, but during the story, you didn't.
Thank you.
All right.
I was just going to repeat again, the measured and the timing were exquisite and I don't use the word very often, flawless, but that is how it felt to me. I was brought farther and farther in because I stopped tracking your voice. Stopped looking for the rhythm because I was, and that was an absolutely lovely sensation. And I wasn't going to make a comment because all I could think of was 18, no, 12. 12.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good story, and thank you, Jim, for sharing that. And I have now got to go pull out my Bible and read that little thing, that little Miriam was in the mountain.
Well, it'll probably be translated as on.
Okay.
Because the translators don't like the fact that she was in the mountain.
I like that though.
I do too.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
She was in the mountain. If the cave is in the mountain.
Well, yeah, no, but the all the Bible says is Miriam word the mountain, and the actual word is in, and it's almost always translated as on.
Anytime you can build a story on a little known fact from the greatest story ever told is gold. That's so good.
And it's not my story,
Yeah.
Jill, I'll put it in. Jill Hammer.
I like it though. I find it very intriguing. It makes me want to go back and go, okay, let me look. I gotta go back and see that now. Thank you so much.
It makes me want to know more about Miriam.
Yeah.
Well, one real quick thing. Jill Hammer is part of a group of people who are trying to invent stories about women in the Bible, not just as somebody who happened to be there, but actually make them major protagonists.
Wow.
And so this is
Excellent.
part of that body of work.
I'm going to throw out a little side note. My grandmother's name was Aseneth, and it is a biblical name. You don't know where it comes, right? Don't know where it comes from. Remember Joseph, many colors?
Yes. Oh, sure.
Interpreted the dreams for Pharaoh. Pharaoh said, hey, that's a really good job. Here, I will give you the daughter of my priest. Her name is Aseneth. She will be your wife. And so my grandmother's name was Aseneth.
Oh, that's so intriguing.
And there's very little said about her, but yeah, that's
wow.
So now I'm like, now I want a story about Aseneth.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Okay, we do have a little bit of time left, and we have two ladies that could possibly tell. Barbara or Kiran, you both volunteered, but I believe Barbara was the one on the docket. She's the one that I saw. Do you have a story?
But I get to tell off and let Kiran
No,
go.
no, I'm fine. I haven't heard you. Go on.
Oh.
All right, go Barbara.
All right, okay. This is the season of Christmas and holidays and New Year's, and families getting together and not, and everybody puts on a happy face for everybody. And I'm reminded of a very famous clown from the late 1700s in London. There was a cobbler, and his name was Giuseppe. And he had a son. Now, Giuseppe the cobbler was a very serious man, very stern, never laughed, always stern. But little Joey Grimaldi was born with an infectious sense of humor. He loved to laugh. He loved to play tricks and jokes on people. And his father would say, and he'd smack him across the head, and he said, "What are you laughing at? Get out of here, stop it. There's nothing funny." I'm not sure exactly what he said, but I know he was not pleased with his son, and he'd discourage him from his antics. Well, soon enough, little Joey figured it out. When he was in his father's presence, he was very, very serious. And then he'd go off to the side into a room with his friends or by himself, and he'd clown around. He had so much fun and enjoyed himself. But the minute he saw his father, he was a serious young boy. Well, the way I heard the story, Joey Grimaldi grew up and joined the circus. And he became one of the most famous clowns throughout Europe, early 1800s. Why, he developed routines, and they were given the name Joey. To this very day, circuses around the world, the clowns, someone will come up to know, was that a Joey? He really was very, very famous, and his memory lives on. But the way I heard the story, when Joey was about 29 years old, he went into a very deep depression. He was sad all the time. His friends didn't know what to do with him. He'd go out in public and he was a clown, but he was really seriously depressed. So a friend of him says, "Listen, I know this fantastic psychiatrist. You must go to him. I'm sure he will help you." Well, this psychiatrist was probably a wonderful psychiatrist, but a little unusual. And so Joey went to him and told him how depressed he was and how sad. And the psychiatrist listened. He said, "I have the perfect solution, young man. I think you should go to the circus and go see Joey Grimaldi, and he'll cheer you up and you'll be happy. He'll cheer you up." Joey sat there, looked up at the doctor, and he said, "I can't do that." Well, the psychiatrist said, "And why not?" "Because I am Joey Grimaldi." The first time I found that story in a book before the internet, I was performing at the City Museum of New York, and it was a big exhibition on the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. And so the New York Storytelling Center said, "Barbara, why don't you go into the clown room?" Because there was room just for clowns. And I was like an MC, and we had open telling. So I decided, well, since I'm going to be in the clown room, I should have a story about a clown. And so I went to the library and got the book, and I found that story in the book in a little paragraph. And I dressed up I just happened to have a little tuxedo jacket and tights, and I had a whip, and I was the ringmaster, a big hat, and I told that story. And that's where I found it. And of course, the sign for, this is a sign for clown. I went after that, I went back to college, and I took a drama therapy course at NYU. And as part of the coursework, we did an intensive, we did a clown study. We had to become clowns and discover our own clown. And what I found out, and I will end with this thought, have any of you thought why we laugh at clowns? Why do people laugh at the clown? Because no matter what happens to the clown, they throw pie in his face. He gets stuck on the floor. He gets up, he dusts himself off, and he keeps on going. So that's the story of Joey Grimaldi and the clown. And sometimes I wonder why I clown around all the time. Anyway, that's my story.
Thank you, Barbara. That was including you're talking about the story afterwards, total of about 5 minutes.
That's fine. That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you like any comments?
Well, you know, everyone knows me. I don't rehearse anything. I don't memorize anything. I had just decided to tell you that story tonight. But if, do you want me to, can I have a few more minutes to tell? How are we doing with the time? I don't want to.
Are at 7:19, so we do have we've got a little bit.
Well, I was going to really not tell you that about Joe Grimaldi. I was going to tell you about an immigrant uncle of mine who came to America in 1911. His name was Savas Georgiadis. He came from Turkey with nothing but the clothes on his back and his mother, Athena. They had nothing. It was 1911. They arrived in New York City. He wound up finding himself in Jersey somewhere. He became a barber and a very successful man. But he was my Uncle Sava, and I don't know if you can see this picture. I don't really know. But he, when I was a little girl, all the men in the family would sit in the dining room playing cards and telling stories. And all my sisters were in the basement playing, and the neighbors. Where was I? I was sitting at the top of the staircase with my ear to the wall, listening to the men telling one another stories. They told stories about this trickster whose name was Nasruddin Hoja. And I know a lot of people try to tell those stories and they make them into elaborate stories. It's just simple stories. Nasruddin Hoja was a cleric, a Muslim cleric who lived either 12,036 he was born or 12,037, as though it matters the number of the year. They'd argue, people would argue about him. And there were lots and lots of stories that I know that tell, and I have all his stories that I heard from Uncle Sava. And so I had toyed with the idea of telling you one or two of them, but maybe not for tonight, maybe another time. But there was one, and you know, everyone, I was in a store in Flushing before. There was a Turkish lady, she had a jewelry shop. And I went in and I was having some jewelry fixed. And I said, I told her I was a storyteller. And she saddles up, she came a little closer to me and she said, do you know any Nasruddin Hoja stories? Oh, I said, oh yeah, I have a lot of them. In fact, I once won a contest telling a Hoja story. She said, did you hear the one? They're in a little store, in a jewelry store. And this one's so short. She said, did you hear the story about the time that meat was very scarce? And Hoja was fortunate to get a piece of liver, some kind of beef liver or whatever kind of liver it was. And he took the liver and he had a recipe and he went back home and he put the liver on a plate on the windowsill. And just as he did that, a bird flew in and picked up the liver and flew away with it. And Hoja yelled, wait, what do you get out of here? And then he said, wait. You have the liver, but I have the recipe. The thing with Hoja stories is they're not for children. The men would sit around the table and laugh. They would laugh hysterically. But children don't get it, and even adults don't get it. But anyway. And then my husband would sit in the porch and I'd find another one. I'd run, John, did you hear the story about? And then he found one and he told me one. So that's it, just rambling. I hope you enjoyed my Hoja story.
All right, thank you, Barbara.
Okay.
Anybody thoughts for Barbara? Okay, Chris, go ahead.
I love knowing that all these fellas sat around the table telling each other stories.
That's how I learned. That's how I learned to tell stories. I eavesdrop. None of the kids. They say, "Oh, you should hear the stories they're telling." My sister said, "Oh, you go listen and tell them to us." They weren't interested, but I was. I was great eavesdropper.
Marvelous, marvelous.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway. So, fun.
The Hoja stories sound really, they sound pretty intriguing. They sound,
Oh,
yeah, you know, pretty,
I have so many of them. I
funny.
should do a whole night of them sometime.
yeah, do concert. Yeah, that would
Yeah,
be perfect.
absolutely, right.
Anybody else? Thoughts for Barbara? Okay, Quinn says thumbs up. Good job.
Fun.
It's
fun.
it's a lot of fun. Actually, we are at 7:24, which means we have 6 minutes. Do you have a really short story, Kiran?
Well, I could try. It probably won't go more than 7, I don't think. So,
Okay.
let me try my best. And I'm going to put myself, like Quinn, on gallery because I like to see all your faces. And I'll start right away.
Okay.
This is a Leo Tolstoy story. Gregory Petrovich looked at his land in despair. The harvest had been horrible, and he had not enough coins to buy seeds for his next plowing. So he decided to go to his landlord, the Baron. But he thought he would sweeten him up with a baked goose. And so there he went to the landlord's house, and the Baron and his family were just sitting down for dinner. Ah, Gregory Petrovich, what have you brought? A goose for you all. And perhaps a loan of some gold coins so that I can buy seeds. Ah, Gregory Petrovich, let me consider. If you can share this goose fairly amongst my family, then I may consider. Well, he was a smart man, was Gregory Petrovich, and so he said, well, the head of the goose should go to you because you are the head of the family. And the bottom part of the goose to your wife as she is sitting across from you at the dining table. The 2 legs should go to your 2 strong, sturdy sons who would walk your lands. And the 2 wings to your 2 daughters who would fly away when they get married. And the rest of the goose for me, of course. Oh, the Baron, he was impressed. Ah, you deserve this bag of gold coins. Go. Well, Gregory Petrovich, he was a happy man, and he went home with a bag of gold. But before he reached home, he met his neighbor. And the neighbor got that story out of him and said, well, I should do the same too. And the neighbor thought he would outdo Gregory Petrovich, and he bought 5 cooked geese to the Baron. Oh, said the Baron, now, can you divide this equally amongst us all? Well, the neighbor, he wasn't that smart. And try as he might, he did not succeed. And so Gregory Petrovich was called for, and he looked at the 5 baked geese and he said, oh, that is simple. And he said, to you and your wife, I present 1 goose. That makes 3. To you and to your sons, your 2 sons, another baked goose, and that makes 3. To your 2 daughters, another baked goose, and that makes 3. And to the neighbor and me, and to me, 2 baked geese, and that makes 3. Isn't that equal? And that's the story of Gregory Petrovich. Sorry, I moved on that last bit. Anyway, I was trying to rush it a bit so as not to keep you from the rest of your day.
No, it was great, Kiran. Would you like some thoughts? We've got a couple of minutes left.
Sure.
It's a very Nasruddin Hoja style story.
So much fun.
Thank you.
Anybody else got a thought for Kiran?
I thought it's a great little lesson story, and you're right. It's right in the keeping, and I think it was great. And obviously, at the end, you were trying to compress for time, and that never
Yes.
does any favors. So I think you did an excellent job.
Yeah,
Yes.
I thought it was absolutely great. And just as a real side note, ever so often when you end up at a festival or something, someone will say, "Well, do you have something really quick?" You did an excellent job putting it in there. You did a really great job, because they'll say, "Okay, we got 6
Fantastic.
minutes. Do this."
Wow.
How
And you've
long-
done it. Good job.
How long did I take?
It was about 6 minutes.
Okay.
Or no, a
Could
little
be.
less than 6 minutes.
I usually take 7. So yeah.
Yeah. But you did
I've
great
often
with
thought
it.
a great breakout session at a conference, once conferences get going again and stuff like that, would be simply a breakout session on incredibly short stories. Like corporations work on the elevator pitch, having a whole bunch of 2 to 4 minute well-polished stories that you truly can fit into the end of a program. I think that's an opportunity that we all can work on.
Oh, I just saw something on Facebook for the 99-second story slam. That's on, I don't know whether it's the UK or the US. I'll have to go check. But I know it's tomorrow my time, sometime. Yeah, I thought after this I'll check. But I was very intrigued by the 99-second story slam.
Yes. I go for it, girl.
I was at a slam and it took a long time for the judges. And so the host said, "Does anyone have a 1-minute story?" People said, "Oh yeah, and then got up there and told 11-minute stories, 17-minute stories. One person used to give a 17-minute introduction to the 5-minute story he had promised. That led me to develop a 1-minute story. We should all have at least one.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, we are at the end of our evening. We want to make sure that we do say thank you for the American listserv that is provided, or no, for the listserv that is provided to us by the American
University.
Yes, I did get it correct. Okay.
Through our wonderful friend Joe Radner.
Joe Radner.
Yes,
right.
Joe Radner is just absolutely wonderful with
So generous.
taking care of us with
And
that.
Our next meeting is a week from tomorrow. I never mention the dates because I'm usually wrong, but you can all come. You find the Zoom link, the same place you found the Zoom link for this meeting. The addresses are always the same for the first meeting, the second meeting, the third meeting of the month. And thank you very much, Jim, for the suggestion, because the theme for next month is going to be trees.
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 Perfect. Love it.
Very
Okay.
good.
Thank you
Right.
all so much for
great week.
coming.
You all.
Bye-bye.
You all.
Bye-bye. We'll see you all.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye, Phyllis Blackstone. I always glad to see you.